That's pretty. Absolutely no reason to do that whatsoever other than aesthetics and because I wanted to use my chamfer bit. That's a chamfer bit. I just like the word chamfer. Cuts a 45-degree angle along the edges. Very common for like kitchen tables and so on, and it just makes everything look really nice. Not to mention the fact that I'm so injury prone and I bump into everything. So it's taken the sharp off there, and I've even rounded off all these corners with the finishing sander. Now I think I can say that the benchtop is done, except for the bolts. That's super heavy and super stable. However, if all it is a table with a hole in it, this whole operation has been kind of pointless. I want to be able to mount tools in here. And I'm going to do that using 12mm ply. So here's one, just use my cross-cut jig. You've seen that before, don't need to show you again. To cut a piece of ply just bigger than that void. What I'm going to do now is, there won't even be an offcut this thick. Literally, I'm going to be trimming off the width of the blade as carefully as I can until I make this a super tight fit. Really careful with the first one, but then my life will be easier. Obviously, for each tool that I want to put into the multi-purpose table, I'm going to need a base to which to attach it, and then I'll be able to quickly swap them out very, very efficiently. Well, look, that's the plan anyway. Once the first one is made with some love and care, the router makes your life easy. I'm just going to be able to get a rough cut piece of ply, about the same size, tiny bit bigger, and then use the trim router to go around the outside and knock out blanks as quickly and as many as I want. Well, my hands are nearly numb from all the sanding that it took to get these through. Did a couple of passes each side with the circular saw, shortened it down, and then just sanding. Sanding is expensive, man. The amount of sandpaper I'm going through is astronomical. It's going to cost more than the wood did. But anyway, at the end of the day, that's dead set perfect. Now the first one is made, the blank production is super easy. You see here, all I've done is clamped it down, I've lined it up along one edge, and now I've got the one I fussed over muchly down the bottom, and I'll simply get my trim router, run it all the way along there, and we'll knock off those corners using that lovely little trim bit, which is 12mm and exactly the right size. Lucky the boards weren't any bigger, I wouldn't have been able to do this as easily. And I should be able to get them out quickly. This is how we film video in Australia. It's always upside down. Real men use plywood poker cards. That was pretty good fun. Only took about an hour to knock out the next 3 using the trim base and an awful lot of sanding compared to a bit an hour and a half. I think it nearly took me to make the first one exactly the right size. So I'm going to keep one of them blank. That way I'll always have a spare if I need to make a new one or a break one or wears out or something like that. Now this isn't completely perfect, so they're only going to go in one way. I'll just quickly mark them and they fit in like that. So you will notice it was intentional that these sit a little bit low. So what we're going to do is have the height on them adjustable by putting in 4 screws here, and I'll be able to use those as balances. Then we can start making these into useful bases. Screwdriver just to balance everything out. Took a couple of minutes, just really wanted to make sure this is perfect. And how we're going to test it with a board. So I can feel that dragging nicely along the plywood, which is a bit rougher than the whiteboard. But I'm getting no catches, so that is perfect. Time to get manly and actually use the angle grinder for the very first time. I have literally never cut metal with this before, but I really couldn't figure out how to do an appropriate test. So we're going to dig right in and hope we don't set the MDF on fire. This should be fun, but I am quietly shitting myself. These screws were just a touch too long. I knew they were going to be. They were the shortest ones that I had. So I'm just going to try and flatten those out. Luckily it's the underside of the board, so no one's ever going to see this. Wish me luck, and my condolences to my wife if I end up injuring myself greatly. And I always wanted to say it. Make sure you're wearing these safety glasses. Look up Norm if you don't know what I'm talking about. Here we go. Not gonna lie, that was really fun. I hope that looked as cool to you as it did to me. Whoa, gonna find things to cut with this. The geocaches I could make. So it turns out cutting with the angle grinder is actually a bit more difficult than grinding with the angle grinder. Here's my first attempt. Look at the mangling on that bolt. So obviously I had to cut these down. I didn't want to use the hacksaw because that was going to take too long. And it was challenging. You'll notice the glove too, because I very quickly learned angle grinders heat up metal bolts really quickly. And because of that, it's probably not the best idea to use your rubber clamp to hold the bolt steady. It was very safe. It was very steady. I'm just glad that sort of didn't catch on fire. Take 2, this time with a jig. Melting clamps is not fun. So to get this to look more like this, I'm going to utilize this piece of wood. What I've done is I've drilled a hole and then used a Forstner bit to make that happen. When the bolt is completely tight, like so, I know that the height of that is exactly the height that I need in order to have these bolts at the correct height for locking a table without protruding out. So I've done the first one, obviously, it worked quite well. This was the angle I was about to use to film my pretty sparks flying off that bolt as I cut it. Then I took a look down. Yeah, that's a propane tank that I use as my tripod. I'm not going to be throwing pretty sparks at that. Let's find another tripod, shall we? See, I'm not completely stupid, just mostly. I'm never going to get tired of that. 4 bolts cut to size. That was jolly good fun. I should probably buy a file, but in the meantime, well, concrete works pretty much just as well. Perhaps something I should have foreseen and didn't was the fact that if you put a round washer on a round bolt and then try to tighten a wing nut, funnily enough, the whole assembly just spins and eventually you get to the point where that wing nut does not tighten very easily. So I got my new favorite toy, my angle grinder, and I set up a little jig, which I'll show you now. Grinded those down just enough that they're going to sit in the slots of that table on top of the bolts. So because they've now got straight edges on them, they can't rotate. Well, at least they won't be able to once this super glue dries. And then I'm going to have this very simple clamp that I made up for it. I'll just put that over the top, put 2 clamps on either side of the bench, and that should hopefully solve my little mounting problem. Not quite feck up to feature level, but at least it's a feck up to a fix. That is, of course, assuming this actually works. Otherwise, I'm going to have to come up with a plan C. P.S. Anyone old enough to remember The 12th Man? He does his really good skit with Johnny Tapp at the races and Kenneth, who had a really famous lisp. I currently feel like that situation where every f***ing horse has an S in his name. Got the Invisalign plates in, and it seemed in that last video that the S's were just slipping over every taff and tackatath. The price we pay for vanity. Forever Fiddling would be another good name for the channel, though I'm not quite sure how that would have flown on YouTube. Next problem with my sliding bolts. When I added the washer and made the lovely straight ends to stop them from rotating in the slots, the trouble is just that little bit of extra thickness made them very difficult to slide in and out, and I don't want that. I want this to be easy. So I've got my new favorite toy again, and I'm trying to very evenly, as you can see there, thin down that top head with the angle grinder. So I've already done a couple, they seem to be working quite well. Last 2, let's make them smooth. I wouldn't have thought it, but the sandpaper actually works rather well on the metal. Never would have occurred to me to use it on metal other than wood. I mean, it's going to kill the sandpaper, but hey, that's what it's for. It does make things nice and smooth. Very hot though still, hence the glove, Michael Jackson style. Bugger me, it's just one thing after another. Except, while that has worked really well, you can see there, the heat from the angle grinder has melted my glue. Ah dear. All the things you never think about until they happen to you. Ah well, we can fix that. The glue on my bolts and washers has finally dried after the angle grinding kind of unstuck it earlier on, and it's time to put this Benchtop into its first proper use. Here we go. First thing, these grooves here, they were a mistake. They don't actually help. This is only the second time I've put it on, but the first time was a lot of buggering around, and if anything, these nuts and bolts and the wing nuts here get caught in the little groove and make it harder to spin rather than easier. So the 5 seconds they save me on positioning the tabletop, I lose in trying to tighten them. So, well, not a lot I can do about it now, but if you are going to replicate this, leave those out. You can do it like this. Watch. Line these up. Easy as that. Slide it through a bit. Line them up from the back side. Only need to go a centimetre in, just so it's got something to grab. And then these ones, with my all improved running washers, tighten up super easy. So now you see the problem here, these ones keep getting caught on this little corner. So they didn't really add anything to the design. I thought I was being clever. Simplicity is often the key. However, check this out. Oh, that must weigh close to 10 kilos, I reckon. And that is super, super stable. So all of my insets now have a really happy home to live. Chuffed with that.